Good afternoon. Welcome to the February 16, 2026 meeting of the University Assembly. This is a special meeting of the University Assembly called for the purposes of updating the Faculty Senate / Assembly Constitution. And as part of that process, according to Article 9, Section 3 of the current Constitution, after the Faculty Senate approves a draft of set amendments, we're supposed to have as an assembly to discuss them. And so today basically is an opportunity for people to raise issues that they wish to discuss, pro or con, or just as ideas. And once we are done today, having that discussion, then within 24 hours, Corey will send out a ballot. The ballot will be open for 7 days. And depending upon the result of that, we will or will not have updated the Constitution for the first time since 2018. It takes 2/3 of the vote to ratify the proposed amendments to the Constitution. As far as where this is coming from, again, we haven't updated it in 8 years. Obviously, a great deal has changed about university life in the last 8 years. And we've faced some challenges in terms of a variety of things that we've dealt with, like COVID, for example, in terms of updating our processes. And so that when we wanted to have shared governance activities, still the way it's written in the Constitution requires things like in-person assemblies and quorums and voting, which especially is difficult in the current context tied to, or as people perceive as difficult, tied to the relevant, the prevalence of the Zoom meetings and whatnot. But also as more and more, especially as more and more of a faculty is not simply based at Potomac State or at Dun & Beckley, but that well over half of the faculty is in the School of Medicine or all of the 5 health science colleges. It's become more and more difficult across time to be able to have in-person meetings. And so a big part of this is the idea of moving to a space for, effectively hybrid systems so that we can use those going forward. While we were trying to make those kinds of changes, we made some others as well. And when I say we, I want to make sure to stress that this is part of a multi-year process that's really gone through 4 different groups. It started back when, in the time period when Scott Wayne and Frankie Tack were the chairs of the Faculty Senate, and tied to challenges in that time period, tied to things around COVID, things around transformation. Proposal from that leadership group then went to the Shared Governance Committee. The Shared Governance Committee then sent it to a subcommittee, including people with different types of faculty appointment from different campuses, to try to work out a few final tweaks to the system. And then that document then went to the Faculty Senate, which approved it last December. And so what we're doing today is talking about the document that was approved last December. The way that the amendment process works is that any kind of proposed amendment has to come from the Senate. So we're not today considering any new amendments or changes to the language that is in the current document that's as proposed. We're just discussing the changes that have been proposed. If people would like to make an amendment, they should contact Corey Hunt, and then he will get that expeditiously in front of the Senate for consideration. And again, I would probably just stress again, this does not necessarily look like any individual member of the Senate would want necessarily. It's been a collective process across multiple groups, across multiple years. And so there are compromises that are made. I'll just give one example. Scott Critchlow, political scientist. Political scientists, generally speaking, don't love it when oversight groups or legislative bodies have term limits. They like to have voters vote for those kinds of actions. But we do have actually an extension of the term limit from 1 year to 2 years after serving 6 as part of this document, because for the entirely fair point of view that you want to have more inclusion in terms of who serves in Senate, and you shouldn't necessarily have the same people in the position year after year after year after year. In terms of major changes, probably the biggest one, like I said, is changing kind of the way in which the assembly would work, but there are a variety of smaller changes as well. Beyond that, I don't want to necessarily kind of lecture anyone about this. If you took the time to be here today, I'm going to guess that you wish to weigh in on some of the proposals. To the extent that either Corey or myself can't answer any questions about them, we're happy to do that. But also, of course, if anybody simply just wants to sort of make certain points, we're more than willing to sort of share those discussions as part of a group. If you're in the room, you can go to one of the microphones. And Corey will handle the people who are online through the chat function. Or, oh, the Q&A function, sorry. And with that, does anyone have anything they wish to say about the proposed amendments to the Senate and Assembly Constitution? No. No takers? Okay. Well, I mean, I will say, obviously, people should vote the way they wish to vote when they get the ballots. But I think part of why, from the feedback we got at the Senate meeting back in December, when again there were 0 questions, is this is part of a multi-year process. People have had the chance to weigh in through at multiple levels in multiple spaces across a period of years. So we really have worked pretty hard and put a lot of time in trying to make this a broadly acceptable document. Obviously, maybe not perfectly acceptable to every single person, but it is important to kind of make these changes because if we don't, it becomes very, very hard, especially going forward, to run assemblies. And we do want to make sure that there is that shared governance opportunity without quite so many hiccups as the current assembly function requires. Joe Jones, College of Creative Arts and Media.
Thank you, Scott, for the introduction. Just a quick question, I guess, compared to our peer institutions, was any of that looked at of like what peer institutions are doing because of all these changes due to COVID?
That would have been the start of the process when I was not part of Senate leadership. Corey, would you?
Hey, Corey Hunt, Faculty Senate Office Administrator. That was part of the beginning of the process, is we wanted to make sure that we weren't, there wasn't anything we were missing related to our peer groups. That is a big part of why we included Article 1 in the proposed amendments. That is the new draft of our approach to shared governance as a faculty body. We noticed a lot of our peers had they defined what shared governance was and what role faculty played in decision making. And so we wanted to add that in as well, especially coming out of transformation, kind of setting the expectations there, especially with us getting into administration coming in as well. Beyond that, nothing that we did was terribly much different from other institutions outside of, we did adjust the university assembly, as Scott mentioned, in terms of how it functions, how items are brought before the university assembly. A lot of our peers don't have that type of function. Really, the faculty senate is elected, and there isn't really a mechanism for larger items to be brought before the entire faculty body. So that was interesting, and it's not as common. And that's partially why we made some adjustments to that process. Also because we wanted to make sure that we have elected representatives in the faculty senate. And we wanted to make sure that we're making use of those representatives, not taking every single issue to the university assembly, given its size and how much it takes to get that group together. Because institution-wide, we're looking at about 2,600 faculty. But everything else beyond that is pretty standard for us. We just found those 2 parts were a little bit off, and we made some adjustments based off that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. And just to provide a little more context regarding some of the things I wanted to note, that in terms of impact of representation would be one of our changes is we lowered the maximum constituency composition for the faculty senate. So right now that limit is 1 constituency can make up to 39% of the faculty senate composition. That really only impacts 1 constituency, that is School of Medicine, given its size. We've lowered that down to 25%. of the composition. This wasn't done with the intent to push out any school of medicine representation. It was more to try and find a better balance within the Senate so that some of the smaller constituencies felt like their voice had more of an impact and couldn't be kind of completely overshadowed by one constituency. In addition to that, we made a minimum number of representatives of 2. There was no minimum prior to this amendment, and coming out of transformation, some of our constituencies have shrunk quite a bit, and we wanted to make sure that there was fair representation, even if those faculty numbers start to dwindle a little bit, using the calculation that we have, which is 1 faculty senator per every 20 faculty member or fraction thereof. So we want to make sure that number stayed at 2 above.
And I would say, just to add on to one thing that is relevant to the thing that Corey brought up, is that there definitely was an interest to kind of make Senate more active and sort of put more shared governance activity in front of Senate versus the Assembly. So we have added another kind of avenue for that to occur, for people to bring things to Senate and or to have Senate return to a topic if people are not thrilled by what the Senate did on the topic. So we have kind of built in more access points that way to have Senate more active. The other kind of big thing in terms of proportional changes is that it is now tied to that interest in making Senate more active, more difficult to call an assembly. It's going from 5% of the faculty to 15%. Because again, we do want to sort of keep Senate active, making sure that all of y'all who come regularly, actually have things to do, as opposed to just going to the assemblies all the time. But also we recognize that since we do have the opportunity to have the assembly, there will be occasions when it's important for the entire faculty to weigh in. Obviously, we know that not every member of the faculty can find times on a Monday afternoon regularly to even consider running for Senate. And so I think the assembly is important to have in terms of making sure that for extra special or especially concerning events, that there is the avenue for everyone to have a voice. But we do think it's probably more efficient to try and do more things in Senate itself. And so trying to kind of create more pathways for that to occur. Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah. If the amendments pass, they become effective immediately. So it will have an effect on the upcoming election cycle if they pass. So if there's a question about the voice of faculty and how that changed, if that's about Article 1 that's been added, and it's not just tied to WVU, of course. In higher education spaces all around the country, there's a concern that more and more about the way universities are run is being pushed more and more outside of the hands of the faculty and beyond the expertise the faculty have about that will definitely inform everything from retention to curriculum, et cetera. And so we wanted to kind of more broadly encourage and kind of raise up the idea of shared governance across the institution. So the new first article is there to kind of encourage that broadly and generally. And so as an example of this, the colleges at WVU vary a great deal in terms of the types of college governance that, in terms of whether or not they do or do not really include faculty as part of that. And so the idea here would be whether you're doing things at the university level, the college level, department level, program level, that we have a document to turn to that would sort of say what shared governance is generally, if the faculty in a certain department or a certain college wanted to kind of create more of a shared governance kind of space inside their own unit. And so kind of the idea of coming to an agreed upon language for that was meant to kind of give more faculty, or to give faculty more ideas and choices about how they might wish to pursue that. Right. Okay. So to explain why we thought it was so important to change the assembly process. Generally speaking, I assume probably 30, 40 years ago, it was probably difficult to get a large proportion of the faculty all at one space for a certain number of hours on a certain afternoon in that kind of context. In the 2026 workspace at a flagship university with multiple campuses, with multiple kinds of colleges in it, it's near impossible. And so the idea, and so when we've had assemblies regularly, or not regularly, recently, there's been like multiple hurdles to making them occur in the first place. A big one being setting quorum, and then keeping quorum, and then trying to kind of vote while you're trying to keep quorum, and you're not sure if you kept quorum across time. So the idea of moving to electronic ballots here, we still have the assemblies as places for discussion and debate and to put ideas forward, but that the voting would occur separately. Because the voting process for a faculty as large as WVU's takes a great deal of time, but both the voting and the counting. And so the idea would be that you would still have the assembly as proposed, but then as proposed, you would have an electronic ballot that would go out and you would vote separately from the assembly itself. So that's the concept. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. The questions that I've just been responding to come over the computer that Corey is monitoring for people who are putting questions into the Q&A. So that's where those questions are coming from. Oh, I will say, because I know there was someone who asked about other changes to the document. I mean, Corey sent out the email which sort of gives you like a long list of what those are. I think for the average member of the faculty, they're not going to consider them really huge changes with one or two exceptions. But I did actually want to bring up one because it's tied to a topic I know interests a lot of the faculty, and that is the faculty representative of the state government. Currently, that position is a one-year term position. You don't get any work release for it, even though you have to go to many, many, many meetings because you're also tied to representing WU in various faculty groups across the state, as well as in terms of working with our team in Charleston. And so a proposal here that I think is very, very important is moving that to a 2-year term, which will allow for sort of more specialization and learning, and also getting a encouraged 25% change to your workload for that job, because that job is a considerable time commitment. And we are very well aware how incredibly interested much of the faculty is in what goes on in Charleston and making sure we have effective communications from the faculty to our team in Charleston, to the legislature. And so we viewed it as very, very important to make sure that that position became maybe more valued than it was, say, back 15 years ago. Now, I should say, if perhaps at some point in the future you wish to run for that position, the 25%, like as Senate, we can't control you actually get the 25% change in your workload, but the idea is that ideally the president and provost of the university would look kindly upon a change. It would have to still be changed at your department college levels as well. But we know that more and more that's a position that we should value and make it easier for people who take it on to do. And so there's that change. Sure.
Sorry to steal the mic back here for a second. Regarding other changes that are larger regarding faculty representation, with the changes to the University Assembly, we have also redefined who qualifies to be a part of the University Assembly. In the current Constitution, University Assembly membership is defined using Board of Governors terminology for what is a full-time faculty member. We wanted to get away from that and make our own definition. Part of that is because right now, anyone with a full-time faculty appointment that is non-temporary is considered a member of the University Assembly. And when we had the University Assemblies for the vote of no confidence on President Yi, we had some concern from faculty because right now, the University Assembly includes administrators. So all the deans, all members of the provost's office, they all have faculty appointments. And so they're all technically members of the University Assembly. And so the concern was that we were voting on actions related to people or, related to administrators, while those administrators could also vote on those issues as well. So with that adjustment, we have narrowed it down to, we've excluded certain populations. Basically, we're acting to exclude administrators of certain levels. It's defined in the amended constitution. And we have excluded anyone who is not subject to annual promotion and tenure review. So that is our attempt to kind of remedy the situation from the past couple of University Assembly meetings. Additionally, with the executive committee, the Faculty Senate Executive Committee kind of serves as we approve the Executive Committee approves the agenda for Faculty Senate meetings. It can act in place of Faculty Senate on matters of importance where timing is a big issue. In the current constitution, the president, provost, and the chancellor of health sciences are all considered voting ex officio members. The revision changes them to ex officio non-voting members. So it preserves the voting only for faculty members, not for those administrators. Additionally, the new constitution adds in a reserve seat for both the Kaiser campus and the Beckley campus, because we weren't guaranteeing representation for those two campuses prior to the amendment. I don't think there's anything else major I'm overlooking. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Corey. You said right now, or you're trying to exclude members who are not subject to yearly review. But I also know visiting assistant or visiting faculty are subject to that yearly review. So will visiting faculty have voting rights in this new University Assembly? Because I don't believe they do have voting rights now.
If they are correct, because they have temporary appointments.
They're temporary. So, I mean, some of the visitors here we have, though, I mean, I started as a visiting assistant professor. I'll be honest about that. And I wanted to vote in certain things that I couldn't because my future was still tied to this place, even though I was temporary. So, yeah, I know we can't make amendments. Maybe that's something to consider for the future of treating our visiting faculty, because they are subject to yearly reviews, because they are subject to everything else we are all subject to, that they would have some kind of representation at University Assembly.
Let me double check the phrasing, because I can't remember it verbatim sitting at the podium, but I think based off of the current phrasing, as long as they are 1.0 FTE.
But they're temporary, though, I think, right?
Let me check the wording, the way we phrase that real quick.
Thank you.
Okay, just to clarify that, we did retain the non-temporary phrasing and who is a member of the University Assembly. The way it reads is, shall include full-time faculty and non-temporary employment by West Virginia University on all campuses and holding an academic rank of instructor or above, with the exclusion of, and then it adds in the titles and levels that are excluded. So, that is one of the items where if people if any members of the University Assembly feel strongly about it, members of the University Assembly can propose amendments for Faculty Senate to consider. So if they send me a proposed amendment, I would then put that before the Faculty Senate, who must then act on that in some form within 3 months. So really, my recommendation is if there's anything about the current amendments that you dislike, the two main ways of action, to see action on that would basically be to, one, vote down, vote against ratifying the current amendments, and then send your feedback, or two, to, once the voting is complete, send me any sort of recommended amendments that you think need to be made, and then we can put that before the faculty senate for further.
Are there other questions? Any other questions in the room? No? Okay. I mean, I will kind of wrap this up by sort of saying, like, again, this has been the process of a multi-year effort by people from across the campuses of the university. And again, big picture, one, yes, if you have problems with it, of course, you can, vote against it or send Corey ideas for amendments that the Senate can consider. But I would sort of say big picture, the whole purpose behind this is to try to keep shared governance active at WVU and make it simpler for members of the faculty to take part in shared governance activities. Those were kind of the two underlying things behind all of this. So I hope you'll keep that in mind as you consider your ballots tomorrow or later in the week. Seeing we have no further questions, we have concluded our business. Ballots will be distributed inside the next 24 hours. If you have any questions, contact the Faculty Senate office or Corey or myself directly. Thank you for attending today. Enjoy the rest of your Lundi Gras, as the guy from New Orleans.